Hey everybody, welcome back to the next episode of the Legacy Liftoff podcast by Dronadair. I'm your host Cody Retlick, and today I have a very special guest with me, someone that I've followed for a very long time, that I admire, and someone that truly is a world-renowned golf photographer, Evan Schiller. Evan, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, Cody, great to be with you. Thank you for having me on. Looking
Yeah,
forward to it.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I've followed your stuff for quite some time. Anybody that knows me, anytime I can combine drones and golf, I am all in. So being able to have you on the podcast is a true treat because I think you take some amazing photography, photos of golf courses all around the world. You've been doing it for quite some time now, I know, and that course list is stacked up quite heavily at this point. I know at some point I saw you said like over 600, but do you have that narrowed down now of how many you've actually shot?
I I think it's over 700 now. It's in the I think it's like mid 700s, something
Wow.
like that. I
Yeah,
I haven't nailed it down, but I know I've passed the 700 mark.
that's awesome. I mean, that's fantastic. I got to ask selfishly, you get to travel obviously all of these. Does the wife come with you? Is that something that she gets to indulge on some of these as well? Because I know
She does. Yeah, she
the
does. Couple once in a while she doesn't say it all the time, but once in a while she goes, "I'm coming."
Yep, exactly.
If I'm
My wife,
going, yeah.
yeah, you gotta, right? It's like, hey, that's a trip of a lifetime in some of them, right? It's like, all right, let me
Yeah,
come with.
it's like if we're going to the Caribbean or Hawaii. When I went to Montana, that was one she said, "I gotta go." Ireland, she generally likes to go on those, so,
Oh yeah, beautiful spots. I
uh,
mean,
yeah,
some of
she
the
goes.
areas,
Not all the time, but yeah,
cool,
definitely sometime on the
nice.
good ones.
Well, I always like to start off by kind of learning, your story. Other than what you've put out there, in some ways, I feel like I know some things about you, just from listening to other podcasts or your
Sure.
YouTube videos or some stories or whatnot. So I always like to hear just kind of where you began, right? Like as a photographer, I know you were a PGA, you're trying to go through that PGA professional route, right? Competed in the US Open at one point, correct?
I did.
I'd love to hear kind of those early days stories of, what you were going on in your world and how you kind of transitioned into golf course photography.
Well, growing up, I played probably played more tennis when I was really young than golf, and then I started transitioning to golf. My father played a lot of golf. I never thought that I would become a photographer, let alone a golf course photographer. When I was growing up, it wasn't even on the radar. It wasn't a big thing, and there probably weren't that many people doing it. And somewhere along the line, when I was playing a lot of tournament golf. I played amateur golf. I played some mini tours. I managed to get and play in some tour events. I started, taking a camera with me because I was going to all these beautiful places, and my mother was a pretty good photographer, not a professional. My father was a movie maker, not a professional, but really good. Did some really cool stuff. My mother she had some really nice equipment. In fact, she had a Leica, which was at the time one of the
Nice.
best cameras. And so
Yeah.
I don't know if it was in my blood or my genes or whatever. And we would go on trips wherever. I mean, I remember going to Florida, and they bought me this little Instamatic camera film because there was no such thing as digital. And I remember going to Lion Country Safari, and I think it was in West Palm Beach. I don't even know if it's still there, probably not. And taking some photos of the animals and just taking stuff. And I don't know how old I was, 7 or whatever, 8. My mother would look at this stuff and say, "Oh, that's pretty good." And, I didn't know the difference. So I would just run around with my Instamatic, and fast forward to when I was playing tournament golf. You've probably heard this story before. I was out playing the California Open in August in the desert. It was 120 million degrees. And after the tournament was over, my buddy Tom Patry and I went over to play PGA West. which had just opened. It was a stadium course. It was it was a Pete Dye course. It's the sister course to Sawgrass, and playing the ninth hole. It was early morning, and there was no cell phones then. We hit our shots, and there was this beautiful hole in front of us. It's kind of a little dog leg right around the water, and had Pete Dye's railroad ties and a bunker running the length of and then there was this beautiful reflection in the water of a mountain in the background. And I just stopped, and I remember looking at this. My friend and Tom and I stopped and looked at this, and it's like, wow. And I wished at the time I had a camera.
Yeah.
So went home, bought a camera, a Minolta. I remember it was a Minolta camera, or maybe my mother gave me one. I don't remember. And it was film, and so I just started taking it with me. It was in my golf bag, and if I ever had a caddy, the caddy picked up, he would look at me, what's in this bag?
Yep.
And I would just take photos for fun, and and it was film, and it wasn't even slide film. It was like these strips of negative film, and I would get them developed, and I would make some prints, and I would hang them all over my walls. They would line like walls of all the different places I played, and I used to have pennants of all the my favorite teams, like basketball, mainly basketball and football.
Okay.
So the golf photos, and they weren't big, they were like 8x12. Golf photos started replacing the pennants.
Love it.
And yeah, so that was, and then a few years later, I started, working as an assistant at Quaker Ridge, and then at Westchester, and was taking photos, and actually ended up working with Tom at Westchester, and we put some photos in the pro shop to sell during the Buick, and to my surprise, they sold.
Like, hey, someone else thinks that they're beautiful, right? It's like,
yeah, it was mind-boggling. And then, and then I did it a few other courses in the area, and say, I still never thinking that this would be a profession, because I had the view that, struggling photographer,
yeah.
Can't make a living taking photos. And there was a friend of mine. Actually, no, he wasn't. He was an acquaintance. I knew him. He was a member at another course, but he was a friend of mine, and we started talking. And he was very successful in the he was a consultant, and he goes, in the fashion industry. He goes, I know a lot of photographers in New York who are very successful, making doing really, really well. So don't sell yourself short. And I always remembered that. And I thought, okay, he must know something I don't know. So he was right.
Yeah. I mean,
looking back now, I said, yeah, okay, he's right. Now, I happened to be in the right place at the right time. Golf was really starting to boom. We're now in, golf had a boom in the, 20 years ago, and now it's got another one. So I just happened to be in the right place at the right time also, which helps.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're right, though, right? I feel like we are right now too in a boom. Like, golf has gotten so cool, right? To be doing, and to constantly be, posting about it. And you got the YouTube golf now scene and all this other stuff. It is something that has really, really blown up for sure. But I think I love hearing that story, because there's such a transparency of, like, most of the guests that I've had on so far, that, like, you can pinpoint that one moment of you standing on the tee box on number 9 at PGA West, of like, I just was like, I should be taking a photo of this right now. And I know that someone telling me that that there's a photographer career out there that could possibly be successful, that you kind of took it to that next step. So after that, was that a very quick transition? Did you say, hey, I'm going to go all in on this? Or did you kind of just start slowly, taking photos or reaching out to more golf courses? Or how did it kind of progress after you realized, like, man, there might be something here that I should explore?
Yeah, I don't even know while I was taking these photos if I thought it was ever going to be a profession. And, I may have reached out to a few courses, but, I was still working at Westchester. And I actually, I really enjoyed coaching or teaching. So I'd stand on the tee all day giving golf lessons, and which I loved. And I remember I befriended Mike Hebron, who's a PGA professional. He's known for his teaching. He's written numerous books, and he was at Smithtown Landing on Long Island. And I remember driving out there to go see him because I wanted to, I got lessons from him, but I also learned a lot about, coaching or teaching and giving golf lessons. And he was really, really, really helpful at it. And I worked at Quaker Ridge, and Rick Verschure, who was the head pro there, was all for me going, I'd, 3 o'clock in the afternoon to get in the car and drive out to Long Island for, it took me an hour and a half or whatever it was. And the reason he really helped me, but the reason I bring that up is because Mike was the brainstorm behind the first teaching and coaching summit in Dallas, Texas. And I remember being around him when he was putting this thing together, and it was like the Woodstock of golf teaching, and hey, you got all these, top teachers. And one of the guys he brought in was Fred Shoemaker, who was the founder of Extraordinary Golf. And Fred and I befriended each other and, kept in touch. And I think it was maybe a year or two later, and he was in California in Carmel. I remember going out to see him. We started hanging out, and I really loved what he was doing with Extraordinary Golf. So I left Westchester, and I started working with Fred because I just loved what he was doing, the coaching style, the environment. But all along, I was still taking photos. So as I was working with, Extraordinary Golf, I was still giving some lessons on my own. My photography business was gradually building, and I never thought that I would make the transition over. But as it grew and more, I started doing more and more of it. I was splitting my time, and then I did more and more photography, and I got more requests, and so this thing kind of organically grew while I still had this other gig, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like I just jumped ship and all of a sudden did it. It just gradually built up to the point where, it is now. So yeah, it's been great, especially, COVID was golf was a beneficiary of COVID, and, golf has just exploded in the last 5 or 6 years. And especially I would say in the last 2 or 3 years, all the new golf courses coming on, new projects. And so again, it's like being in the right place at the right time.
I think that's one of the coolest things of it as well, just being that right timing, right being there, but also just like you were passionate about it. You loved doing it, and you turned it into something that, you didn't necessarily know it was going to be what it is today, but you just stuck with it, and also saw the signs of like, all right, it's kind of starting to see the ball rolling here a little bit towards the cup. And, hopefully, continuously doing that, we'll get to that point. But yeah, I mean, COVID was a huge, I think, increase to like golf as an awareness. Obviously, golf's been around for a very long time, and a lot of people play it, but it really, truly, has expanded. I think since COVID, so many people have. It was the only sport we could really play, right? I mean, that was like everybody wanted to get outside, and
it was safe.
Yeah,
it was a safe
exactly.
place.
Yeah. And it's so cool to see it kind of continuously grow. And a lot of golf photographers out there now too. I feel like, different from what it was when you first started, probably, as well, being that social media was not
Yep.
around in the beginning days. How did you go about like marketing yourself in the
Yeah.
beginning? Was it referrals? Was it like obviously the connections that you made at these courses and throughout your time working at these different clubs? What do you kind of attribute some of your early successful growth areas to how you were able to market yourself?
Yeah, well, like you said, there was no social media. I would say even email was kind of in its infancy. So you were left with snail mail or email. And so with 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 social media now, you have a platform free basically
Hmm.
for, advertising yourself. I mean, I know you could pay for it too, but
Yeah.
um yeah, so it was. I made some phone calls. I mean, did it the old-fashioned way. I sent some letters, emails, and eventually, I remember also contacting, magazines. I figured, well, magazines, some calendar companies. I figure if the more my work's out there, the more people will see it.
Hmm.
So a lot of the work was going out, like I was going out, like it was like the tide was going out, right?
Yeah,
Um,
right.
trying to get something to come in. And then eventually the tide started to turn, the tide started to come in, and I didn't have to, go out and fish for it as much. So, but it took a
Love it.
while.
And
You
that's
know,
what
I
everybody's dream is, right? When they're starting to see that change in a business, it's like, all right, now we're starting to see more people come in towards us, and you're getting all that feedback. I mean, let's talk about the magazines for a little bit because I know you've been published in some big time magazines like the Masters Journal, the US Open magazine, Ryder Cup Journal, Links magazine, Golf Digest, Golf. I mean, the list, just some of the more popular ones probably, but also ones that uh, you've been published in a decent amount, right? How did that kind of all? Is that from you reaching out to them or them seeing your work and kind of working in coalition, or
yeah.
uh, doing some stories on certain golf courses and they know you've taken some photos and want to like license some of those, or how did that all transpire with some of those?
I'm trying to remember because a lot of these relationships have been long-standing for, been a long time, 20 years, with actually all of them. I think I originally reached out to them. I tried to find who was the photo editor, and eventually, I might have sent them some stuff, and I think that's originally how it happened. And then they would start contacting me, and
Hmm.
it took a while. It took a while for me to be, like one of the people on their list. Like they would call and say, "Hey, do you have photos of this thing or that? This course or that course?" I mean, now they see, if you post something on social media, a lot of them will see it and say, "Hey, I saw you photograph such and such course. Could you send that to us? We're doing a story on it,"
Yeah.
or something to that effect. And it used to be, not anymore, that magazines would hire photographers to go do shoots.
Hmm.
In addition, they have their staff, but they used to hire magazines to go do shoots. They don't do it anymore.
Yeah, not.
There's so much stuff out. I mean, I've done shoots for Golf Magazine, Golf Digest, one or two for Link. They don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's not in the budget, but there's enough photography out there where I think they don't have to.
Right. And there's probably, I would say, a lot of people in some ways are either able to just license them those photos without having a higher cost of going to back and shooting again, or, you know, in some cases, getting your work showcased in one of those magazines is a very large, reach that you can get from people seeing your work as well. So their value add
Yep.
is probably changed a little bit over the years, right? Of we need content, we can't get enough of it, to like we have so much of it. Who's willing to kind of just put theirs out there and show it off,
Yeah.
right?
And
In a
it
lot of
it
those
depends,
publications and
um,
whatnot.
what their needs are, or
Uh,
and I'm fortunate. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm fortunate I have a pretty big library of images now, so that helps.
Yeah, for sure, right? It's just organizing all that in some ways too, and should be like, hey, when was this, or how updated was this one, right? You probably got so much that I don't know what your you could probably spend a whole nother episode on your organization and tactics of backing up and all that stuff. But I would love to learn a little bit too more about kind of your process when it comes down to you know I was always been a big proponent of like when I'm shooting a golf course or I'm working with a course, it's like preparation is just as key to actually being there day of and shooting, right? In a lot of ways, because you want to know where the light's going to be best, you want to know time of day, where that sun's coming up, where's it's going down, where those shadows are going to be, and using those to kind of paint your picture and get those best images as you possibly can. When you're looking at and you see you're going to plan and you're going to a new course or a course that you've already been maybe as well. What does that kind of look like from, all right, we're going to do this to that planning of, how deep in do you get it? Can you shed a little bit of light on your process, like pre-shoot?
Most, if not all, the shoots I've done are just because the golf course has hired me.
Mhm.
So versus, I know, lots of times on social media, hey, I'll get a no, come and shoot my course, or I said, well, I think sometimes people think that I just run around taking pictures of random golf courses that I choose.
Yeah.
And I know there are guys who do that, and then they
Yep.
post it.
Yep.
Not how my work is done. Everything's set up, hired by the golf course. I mean, I know there's an issue with that too. Guys just run around with drones
Yeah.
and out on golf courses and flying them around. And I've
Big time.
even said to some of these courses, I said, if you let somebody out here or they come out here with a drone and it hits somebody, it crashes or hits somebody,
Yeah.
they're going to come after you.
Absolutely. Liability's all on the course at that point. Yeah.
Is like, so you're crazy to, first of all, unless they're covered, unless you see their certificate of insurance, they're covered and you have them sign a waiver, I wouldn't let anybody out here. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's part of the process is like, okay, when a course hires me, we go, I first, I kind of find out what they want. We have a back and forth, send them a contract, sometimes they'll ask for insurance, certificate of insurance. And lots of times I'll ask them, I say, hey, don't you want this? You want to know that I'm, at least covered in case something happens.
Yep.
And then it's usually set up, through either the head pro or the marketing person or the GM or anything. And then I always like to speak to the superintendent because they've got their hand on the pulse of what's going on.
Yep.
I said, first of all, you got to make sure he's on board or she, whoever it might be, because you don't want this guy to say, you don't go and say, hey, this guy's coming to photograph the golf course on Wednesday. Can you get it ready? They'll shoot you.
Right.
So I always like to talk to the superintendent to coordinate with them, find out what they've got going.
It's very important for sure to understand that the course is going to look good, right? I mean, yeah, that's a huge step.
So I always like to coordinate with them, whatever it is, especially the morning, in the morning, because you're out there shooting and, they're out there prepping for the day and then they have to get their work done. And, I got to get my work done. So it's kind of this dance where some guys are more helpful than others. A lot of guys most of them are pretty good.
Yeah.
Hey, what do you need? We'll adjust, we'll work around you. Just tell me what you need. I always like to hear that. It's good. Sometimes they don't realize what's involved. Like, I did a shoot recently and it was tough because they had a bunch of play, but I don't think the course or the head pro I don't think they realized what was involved.
Yeah.
Well, that was involved in getting the course ready or making it look good and what was required. So that was a bit of a surprise for them. Even though they said, yeah, we understand. So, and I like to always scout the course before I shoot, just like you said, to get a sense of where the light is, what holes I want to shoot when, whether I want to shoot them in the afternoon, when I want to shoot in the morning. Some might be both. And at what time, like, okay, well, sun sets at 6:30. Looks like the light will start getting good around 5 or whatever. And so I make this tentative plan that's always subject to change, on which I think I'm going to shoot. I'm going to use my little Sunseeker app just to get a sense of where the sun's going to be at what time, because that's really helpful. And I'm always writing little notes. And then the whole thing could change because you get out there and it doesn't look the way you thought it was going to look, but that happens.
You got to roll with it, right? That's the thing.
Yeah,
Weather changes. It's a little bit cloudier that day. Whatever precipitation comes through, you kind of got to roll with the punches at that point.
Yeah, you're always adjusting on the fly. So and the superintendent will want to know. He'll say, well, I'll say, hey, I want to shoot this hole first, or I want to shoot one of these 3 holes first, because I don't know exactly, especially on the first morning, because you don't really know. You kind of know, but you don't really know for sure. It's an educated guess, and then he'll say, well, what time are you going to be finished? And it's hard to say. Is it, well, if all goes well, about like this, but then if there's some cloud cover, you got to just adjust. So yeah, it's
Are you
It's a moving target. It's a lot more than just showing up and taking photos.
absolutely
And
100%? I think that that is the difference too that makes it, taking it from someone just playing some golf and throwing up a drone and just trying to fly quickly, like get what you get, to more so like, hey, this is your career, right? This is your job. This is your reputation, everything that you have built up, and you want to make sure that it is the best as possible. And done that, obviously, in a lot of ways. But I think the big thing too is being able to be flexible, right, while you're out there, and knowing that things might change. And do you usually build in, like, are you there for multiple days while you're shooting, just in case, of weather? And then you, like you said, you have a scout day ahead of time, and then being able to make sure you can get those shots that you need while you're there.
it depends on the project. If I'm going to shoot all 18 holes, yeah, I'm there for, you know, 3, 4 days
Yeah.
maybe. Sometimes, people may just hire me for a 2-day shoot, but I always leave an extra day just in case,
Mhm.
in case it doesn't even, people will look and say, well, it doesn't look like rain. I said, well, that's not the whole story. It could be cloudy
Yeah.
and not rain.
Right.
So you always leave a little buffer just in case, because you never know.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm.
And you can only edit so much, right? Into it. Those shadows and the beauty of the sun peeking through at the right times is hard to mimic in some ways, for sure. It's like, oh, you take beautiful photos. You must have a great camera or a great drone, right? But as you know, it's more than just your equipment, right? It's your eye, it's your planning, it's your ability to find those shadows and those good angles and whatnot. And then most people argue that the most of the time too, it comes on the back end, right? Being able to post process, and make them look good and bring out those beautiful colors and shadows and everything else. Are you a Lightroom guy? What's kind of your post?
I use some Lightroom, but it's mostly in Photoshop. I mean, I was brought up on it. I've been using it forever.
Yeah.
So yeah, and yeah, I mean, there's some post production, but if you do your job, I mean, if the weather's good and you do your job well in the field, from your standpoint, there shouldn't be a ton,
Yep.
right? I mean, if you're shooting in raw, all the information is there, but then there's other stuff like cart tracks or bunkers that aren't raked, and
Hmm.
the degree that you want to fix that stuff up. You know,
Yeah.
I'm always, I mean, I'm always amazed when I see photos and the cart tracks and the dew. There's cart tracks all through the dew, and that's like, well, why didn't you, you know, have them knock the dew off, or why didn't you get rid of the cart tracks,
Yeah.
or have them rake the bunker? Yeah, I mean, I realize it's not all possible,
Yeah.
but some obvious stuff.
Yeah. And that's the thing.
Stakes, like you take a picture, it's a beautiful picture, and there's stakes in the fair and ropes in the fairway. Well,
Right.
it
Get those
takes two
out of there.
minutes to edit that stuff.
Yeah.
It takes 2 minutes to edit that stuff out.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing that takes, your photography and others to different levels, right? It's like being able to pay attention to those details while you're on course, but also afterwards. It's something that I've gotten, I think, better as we go to a little bit, more, as we kind of look at those details. It's something that you just, ultimately elevates it, right, and makes it look so great.
Right.
When did you first start adding drones in? Because, like, you obviously were taking. I know we're taking a step back now here, but like, when did you first start flying?
Wow. So there was no such thing as a drone when I started.
Yeah.
I used ladders and lifts, bucket trucks, sometimes a helicopter. And I remember, various shoots where I was on that, wishing that I could get to a certain spot, and saying, "Hey, wow, if I could get over those trees, or over that lake, or if I could get back behind this, it'll be a really great shot." And I kind of envisioned it, but I never knew how.
Yeah.
So one day, oh God, I want to say this was 15 years ago, maybe. I think I don't even know. I was I had done some work up in Michigan for Boyne Golf, and I was going up there, and their marketing guy calls me and said, "Hey, there's a guy in Detroit. He young guy, just he has his own drone company, makes his own drones. I thought it'd be great for you guys to hook up, and maybe you could, put your camera on his drone." It's
Nice.
like, whoa, dude. I went, whoa. I mean, I'm working with a Hasselblad, which is, it's like a $15,000 camera.
Yeah.
I went, I'm not putting my camera on some dude's drone that I don't even know.
Right before you even really
So
knew
anyway,
him.
we talked. I really liked the guy. He took all the specs of my camera, and he created a gimbal with a quick release for my camera. And I think I got a 24 millimeter or 45. Anyway, a fixed lens.
Mhm.
Turned it up, put it on the thing. Now there was no, official viewfinder, so he took like this security camera. He hooked it onto the gimbal, and that was our viewfinder. Now it wasn't the exact same dimensions as my camera, so we had to learn, okay, well, if the viewfinder's like this, my camera's like that. And so he had this huge big drone that he built. We went up to Michigan and shot a bunch of golf courses for Boyne
That's awesome.
using this. I mean, it didn't stay up very long,
Yeah.
and so that was my first introduction. I was like, "Wow, I like this,"
That's
right?
awesome.
And I said, "Wow, okay, well, maybe we could work together." I was like, "God, I don't know if I can. I mean, I would like to work with this guy, but it's going to be kind of expensive having him come and me come. I don't know if the client's going to go for it. But God, these pictures are great." And this is before DJI had anything, or any of the drone companies had anything remotely good to be creating still photos.
Mhm.
I think shortly after that, DJI came out with their first Phantom, which was a hunk of junk.
Yep.
Because I remember getting
GoPro up
it,
there
and
and yeah, not you still couldn't
yeah,
see it.
it was a hunk of junk,
Yeah.
right? And then I'm still thinking, how am I going to do this? He and I actually did some jobs together. I said, boy, I really gotta. This is somehow going to happen. And then DJI's drones started getting a little better. And I tried them; they still weren't. It's like I'm shooting with a Hasselblad, and now I'm shooting with this little dinky thing. That's it's like. So that's kind of how it started and piqued my interest. And then I was going to have him build me a drone. I said, well, maybe he could build me one and I could fly. So that's kind of how it all started. And then at about the time I was thinking about having him build one, and then he told me how much it's going to cost. And it's like, okay, God,
Mhm.
that's DJI's drones started getting better. They still weren't up to
Yeah.
snuff, but
So what is
um,
what
anyway, that's kind of how it
that's
started.
awesome. Is just for Mike, is he still making drones too, or is he still doing? Do you keep up with him at all, or is he still doing something?
You ever seen those? He films commercials for he filmed commercials for Ford. I mean, this guy. I mean, the way he flies is he films commercials for Ford. You ever see those light shows in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
air
yeah,
with the
yeah.
drones? He does
Nice.
that.
Okay.
He does that, like flying, 300
Yeah.
drones at
Oh yeah.
once or whatever it is.
Seen
Yeah,
a
he
lot of
does
those.
that now too.
That's awesome. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, so he's kind of orchestrates that. So that was my, introduction. And
Yeah, that's fantastic. Do you so what was the first like DJI drone that you were like, all right, this is good enough for me to start taking photos with that rather than throwing up your Hasselblad?
I think it was the Inspire. It was the first. I think it might have been the first
Okay.
Inspire, and even that was limited. I think when it got to the Inspire
Hmm.
2, and I could use I think it was the X5S camera, and I hooked on some Olympus lenses. That's okay. This
Yeah.
will work for now.
So is that what you primarily then shoot with today? Are you mostly shooting Inspire 2 stuff yet, or have you went to the 3, or are you what do you shoot? What's your go-to drone these days?
Well, I haven't officially, but I've come close to retiring my Inspires because I got them when they first came out. I mean, I have one, two. I think I have three Inspire two.
Hmm.
Sorry. They're all about one's. I think the youngest one's like 3 years old or something. I mean, and it's got a lot of hundreds of hours. I've got one that's 6 years old, and they're close to being retired. In about a year and a half ago, I got the Sony AirPeak, and because that to me was the closest thing to when I first started with flying my Hasselblad. Now I can fly a DSLR
Yeah.
camera. So yeah, when Sony came out with this thing, I did my due diligence and I really like looked at it. I talked to people, and so I finally I bit the bullet and got it, and I'm really glad I did because
So
it's really well just being able to take photos with a full frame DSLR, 61 megapixel camera. It's tough to beat. And
yeah.
I know some of the complaints. I got the complaints, but I haven't found it to be an issue. I got all the complaints, and I asked people at Sony, what's the deal with this, complaints, and they explained to me, oh well, they didn't do this correct. They didn't do guys because I have not had any of the. I mean, maybe one or two of them,
Yeah.
but
Well, and that's
I know people complain about the flight time, but now they have the longer life batteries, but you can do a hot swap. So, and I've learned to change lenses, balance the gimbal. I mean, I know you got to balance the gimbal, and it takes longer, of course. But I'm like the pit crew. My pit crew has gotten a lot better.
yeah. Oh, that's the thing. You know it, right? You bring it down, you're ready to go. You know that what you need to do. You learn the process and gotten good at it. So at that point, it's just like repetitive,
Yeah,
right? Um, yeah. That
yeah. I mean, it takes. I mean, it's not like. I mean, because I also have a for doing some video, I got the Mavic 3 Pro because I mean it does for most applications it does pretty
mhm.
good video, which I really like. I mean, I can shoot um, in Apple ProRes, which is perfect. I can use that. So, I mean, it's not like that where you take it out of the little thing, whip out the arms, you put it on the ground, and
Right.
you're up. It's not. I mean, you got it. But I mean, I guess it's part of the trade-off for getting, much better
Yeah.
images.
For sure. And that's just the way it is, right? If ultimately you have those trade-offs, and most of the people that are just flying or just going for a quick shoot or whatever, or just throwing it up with nobody even knowing, right? Most of them have like a DJI of some sort, whether it's a little Air S or a Mini Pro 4 now. There's so many new ones coming out that are smaller and more transportable. I mean, I
Yeah.
even myself, I shoot mostly with either the Inspire 2s or a Mavic 3 Pro, but it's hard to beat the convenience of it at some points, right? When
Oh, I get it.
you don't
Yeah. I
have the
mean,
time.
yeah. Well, that's why I got the Mavic 3 Pro. Mainly, I'm going to use it for video because I can take them both out there, and I can shoot with the Sony. I can take my still photos, and then I can just pop this thing up really
Yeah.
quickly. But don't know what's going to happen when DJI gets kicked out of the United States
Yeah, I
or
was on
banned.
a podcast the other night, and they were talking about it a little bit beforehand, and it's interesting. I don't necessarily, and I don't want to get into that too much here, but I think government related type that type of ban. I hope not. Let's just say it that way. I mean, at the end of the
Yeah.
day, they're too into the market. That would devastate a lot of first responders, fire departments, police departments. I mean, government.
Oh my God. Yeah. Be a
It
huge
would be
hit.
awful in a lot of ways, and I hope it doesn't happen and we get that figured out. But nonetheless, yeah, you have to somehow plan for it
Yeah.
if it does happen for sure. Um,
Yeah.
but
Well,
hopefully not.
opportunity for somebody
Yeah,
else.
in some ways, right? I think we're still waiting for that. We thought it was Skydio. In some ways, they kind of transitioned and raised a lot of money to go a different route that they weren't. They didn't make a whole lot of people from a consumer levels
I,
happy on what they did. But yeah,
yeah.
there might be hopefully someone that overtakes it in
I
some
told
ways.
my I told my buddies at Sony to get on the
Yeah.
ball. This might be your
I
opportunity.
saw Sony. They were at commercial UAV in Vegas last September, and I was there, and I ended up talking to some of the reps there. I'm like, you have a good product, and for people that are more at an advanced level in some ways, like you have a great drone and as well as camera in a lot of ways and the gimbals, right? You're talking cinematography and photography, video. You're there. In a lot of ways, but how do you now take it to let me create more mass market consumable, consumer facing drones where you're not at the top
Yep.
tier, or you have the enterprise applications. I know they've done some thermal and some other things, but yeah, we won't get into that too much here. Uh, we could have a
Anyway,
whole nother,
for
yeah,
another
we could
day.
have a whole nother podcast just on
Yeah.
that, for sure. Out of all the 700 plus golf courses that you've been fortunate enough to shoot over the years, I hate to put you on the spot like this, but I have to do it. Is there a way you can give me a top three or a top five of like your favorite courses that you've ever shot? If you have a top three, top five, is that something that you're comfortable with sharing? If
Yeah, well, I
not,
think that yeah, there could be a top 5 golf course, as a course, and there
yeah,
could be a top 5 that I've
yeah,
photographed, and they may not necessarily be the
right,
same. My top 5 golf courses, and not necessarily in any order, would be Royal County Down, Fisher's Island, Oregon Down, Fisher's Island, Cypress Point, Punta Espada in the Dominican
okay,
Republic. I mean, I know it may not be on most people's top 5, but I
that's all
love it.
right.
Just a personal,
I love it. That's why I'm
yeah.
asking you. I want to know
Um,
your personal favorites.
yeah, yeah, those are my 4. I'm trying to think of the 5th one.
It's tough to narrow
Um,
down, isn't it? Especially when you've done that many.
yeah, yeah. I mean, but there's those 4 for sure. I'm probably just drawing a blank right now. It'll come to
Yeah.
me.
No, and
Um,
that's the thing when you have so many to choose from, it's tough. I don't even have close to the extensive list of you, and I saw yesterday on Instagram, they have the thing where you can share it, and one of them was your top 5 golf courses
oh,
you've
right.
played, and I put mine out there, and I was like, I sat there for 30 minutes. I'm like, I've wasted too much time on this, figuring out what are my top 5 golf courses.
I saw that float. I saw that
Yeah.
floating around. Yeah.
I'm like, all right. And it is different,
Uh,
right? Ones you've photographed versus ones you've played, right? Of your favorite, I'm sure.
yeah, yeah. And then there's, as far as ones I've photographed, there's Abandoned Dunes, but the whole
Yeah.
place, not just the one course. It'd be all the courses there. Abandoned Dunes. I always love going to Pebble. There's a Royal County Down. Probably it's going to make both
Yep.
lists. Fisher's Island maybe both. Fisher's Island might make both lists. And then there's a place in the Dominican Republic, not Punta Espada. It's called Playa Grande. It's a discovery. It's on the north shore of the Dominican Republic. It's discovery land property
Okay.
that they acquired. I don't know. I want to say 5 years ago or so, and it's just.
Fantastic.
I think they have 10 holes along the cliffs.
Nice.
Just rocks and the beach,
That's
and
awesome.
it's
You
pretty
can't beat it.
pretty special.
Anything
Yeah.
water related, cliff related, mountains is just beautiful, right? Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Sure
Yeah,
is.
I know. I know.
Absolutely.
We don't have any of that here besides Lake Michigan in Wisconsin, but we've built it up for sure in the last how many years of kind of making ourselves a golf
Oh man,
destination.
yeah.
It's fun.
Tell you what, the Straits course is pretty cool. The Straits course at Whistling Straits is pretty.
Yep,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's a good
Yeah,
one.
I've we talked about it before, but being a caddy there for a few years growing up, 10 minutes, 15 minutes down the road. Fortunate enough to have that in my backyard growing up. It is a true treat, no doubt. And we got some other, Sam Valley and Erin Hills and Lasonia and Lac LaBelle. I could go on and on. Wisconsin has done a fantastic
Yep.
job of kind of building it up. It's wild. But I love it. So we got to branch out though too. I got to cross some of these off the list that you've mentioned today for sure. It's so many of them out there that we can get to, and
Yeah.
fantastic. So, Evan, what's kind of what's your next step? Like, what's on the horizon for you? Are you, as you're kind of going through? I know you've added video. You've started to kind of do some more video stuff as well. Where can you kind of see yourself going? I know once you hit a certain level, it's like, right, how do I keep going? Are you still, I'm sure you got that passion inside of you, right? I can see it and hear it from you and whatnot, but like, what's kind of like, what are you looking forward to in the next, say, year to 5 years of where you're going with your career?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, I mean, this year is, I mean, believe it or not, it's almost completely booked up, like from now until
That's
November.
fantastic.
There's a few slots, but yeah, it's pretty busy. During COVID, it actually was great because I was able to build up my online store, which I did, and that was really great. It was great for my business. I have a couple ideas. Not necessarily. I don't want to
Yeah,
mention them
yeah, that's all right. That's all right.
because they're still percolating.
That's right. Tease 'em, right?
Yeah, I'd like to uh, probably get a little better at creating some cool videos.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we'll see.
yeah, awesome.
Yeah,
Well,
but
we'll have to
um,
have everybody keep watch then, and know that there's some things maybe percolating.
the other well, one they're still kind of in the process of what it's going to be, and I would like to do a book.
Nice.
Yeah, and I'm kind of again I'm percolating
I would
ideas on what it
definitely
would be, and
read that book if you did launch one. And
and it's not going to be I can tell you it's not going to be, like golf courses of, top 100 golf courses or golf courses of Florida or, golf courses of the British. It's not going to be, I mean, it'll have photos from that stuff, but it's definitely not going to be
yeah,
that. I think, there's good enough books of that. This is going to be different.
I would love to see that.
Um,
I would 100% buy a copy and check it out. I'm sure it would be a great read. I got quite a few of them over on my bookshelf right now, and quite a lot of them are golf. I big into that as well.
I'm
Yeah.
sure.
I have to ask you, like, myself, whichever courses I shoot slash play, I always get a golf ball with a logo on. Do you have anything that you have to have from a golf course that you have, other than obviously the beautiful photos that you take, right? Those are obviously great memories and showcases of that. But is there anything fun? Like, are you a poker chip kind of guy or ball marker, or do you do anything like that? Flags?
Flags, and there's some, yeah, I've gotten, and not from everywhere because I wouldn't have room to put them in. And well, I've gotten a couple of flags that are very unique that you can't
Yeah.
get. They're kind of like like I was at a course shooting in California, and they have this event every year, special event. It's a very, it's a private club, and they have this event, um, and there's a special flag just for this event, and it's very unique what's on the flag, and they happen to have one extra,
Nice.
so I got it. It's probably the coolest flag I
That's
have.
awesome.
Yeah, I can't say where it's from, but
That's all right.
it's very unique. It's not your normal kind of traditional golf flag, but so I just
Yeah.
flags,
No,
yeah.
that's
And I always ask if there's anything unique, about flag or any. So I like to kind of get the usual, unusual, or unique
yeah, no,
ones.
that's fantastic. I was just curious because I'm like, you know what, you got to have some sort of collection of something that you've been to, and I'll keep pencils, and but most of the time it's the balls for me, and because it's just cool to look back at those things and have those memories
Yeah,
of some sort. So yeah, Evan, I
yeah. Like I got a
no,
oh,
go ahead. Sorry.
sorry. I One of the flags I got was a while back was from the challenge at Manele Bay in Hawaii, and the flags are air socks, like they have in an
Mm-hmm.
airport, whatever. So that's very cool, and it has the Manele Bay logo on it. So
Nice.
that's kind of
Yeah,
cool.
that is
Anyway,
super cool. I've been to Hawaii quite often. I kind of lived there for a little bit, more so like
mm,
vacation. I didn't come home from. My aunt and uncle used to live there, so Hawaii's is like a second home to me. I was there shooting a few courses last year. Yeah, it's a beautiful place there as well. You can't beat some of those views, but it's fun to see those different flags and different memories as well. Um, yeah.
yep,
Well, Evan,
yep,
I won't take up too much more of your time. I appreciate you being on here with me today and sharing your story, and it's a pleasure to
absolutely.
connect with you. And I always like to ask at the end if if anybody's listening here, like how can they reach out to you, or who are you looking to connect with certain people, or how can they follow your work and keep up with what you're doing?
Well, they can always go to my website, which is Evan Schiller Photography. You can always find me on social media, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, I mean, LinkedIn. I'm sure if you typed in Evan Schiller or Evan Schiller Photography, you would find me somehow.
Absolutely. Just look for the beautiful photo,
Um,
right? Of I think is do you still have the
right.
infamous one where you're on the ladder shooting? Is still the profile pic?
Well, I'll tell you a quick story to end. We can end with that. Yeah, it's on the ladder, taking a picture of the seventh hole at Pebble
Pebble, yep.
Beach. And you asked earlier, does your wife go on these trips with you? Well, she came on this one to Pebble Beach, and she had a camera. She's not a professional photographer, and she followed me around. And sometimes, she would take pictures of various stuff,
Yeah,
but a lot of times she would take pictures of me taking pictures. So she deemed herself the photographer's photographer.
love it.
So she took that photo, and a local magazine, the Met Golfer magazine, it's a local Connecticut, New York, New Jersey magazine, was doing a story on local golf course photographers. So they called me up and they said, "Hey, can you send us a few photos of courses that you've shot in the area?" And I said, "Sure." And so, like the day before they were going to print, it was almost like an afterthought. They said, "Hey, do you have a picture of yourself in the field?" I went, "Yeah, sure." So I sent them that photo of me on the ladder at Pebble Beach. So the magazine comes out, and I flip through it to open it, and I open up, the whatever the first story, the page that it's a two-page spread as an opener for the story,
Sweet.
and it's that photo that she took, which was, well, first of all, the first time she'd ever been pumped, but it was the largest photo in the story by far, and she got the,
That's fantastic.
and they gave her credit.
Nice. Well, I'm sure
Yeah, so that
I'm
was
sure
cool.
that was an awesome moment for
Yeah,
her and also for you to be like, wow, look at you, right? I mean, this is something that you took to. I mean, I've seen it around. Obviously, I think you run ads in some cases too with it, and it's cool. It's a cool shot. So,
yeah.
congrats to her for capturing that moment. Is a very
The biggest photo I had in the whole article was a quarter page.
That's awesome. I'm sure that that's a breaking point for her, right? That's still kind of I'm
Yeah,
sure talked about in some ways. Like, oh, remember that article where my photo was of you in there?
yeah.
No, that's fantastic. Well, sweet Evan, we'll have all your links and your website and everything in the show notes where people
Great.
can, reach out to you. Again, I really appreciate you being on here and learning from you. Love your work,
Thank you.
and if anybody hasn't seen Evan's work, get out there, check it out. One of the OGs in the golf course photography world, and
Thanks, Cody.
absolutely. I appreciate you being on, and we'll catch up again soon.
Absolutely. Have a great
Thanks,
day.
Evan.